reminded that we are hosting this webinar on land that is the traditional home of Haudenosaunee, the Anishinaabe, and the Neutrals people. We recognize and deeply appreciate their historic connection to this place. We also recognize the contributions Indigenous people have made in shaping and strengthening Waterloo Region, Ontario, and Canada. We are grateful for the opportunity to be here and reaffirm our collective commitment to make the promise and the challenge of truth and reconciliation real in our community. And we also acknowledge that people are joining us from across Turtle Island. Now for some general information for the people joining us and how the webinar is going to work tonight. We ask everyone to stay on mute unless you're the person who's talking. And when we are going to share a screen of yellow to give speakers a 15-second warning, and then I'll turn red when their time is up. So you will see this pop up on the screen. We are recording the meeting and we'll post it to YouTube, hopefully on Monday. And we've renamed the candidates with their position that they are running for behind their name. Matt, Johan, and myself, we're Green Party volunteers. We do not work or represent the Green Party, and there have been no staff or candidates involved in the organizing or in the questions. But we have done this to strengthen the Green Party, is why we're interested in it. For the people who are joining us, so for federal council, we're having this discussion on a position basis. So the candidates for the Ontario representative will go first, followed by the candidates for VP, and last the candidates for fund representatives. The candidates themselves will give a brief introduction, followed by Q&A, and then each candidate will have time for a final pitch. For the Ontario representatives position, we have different questions for each candidate that have been chosen randomly, and each candidate is allowed to answer 2 other questions that were posed to another candidate. We'll also post the questions into the chat window. And we, the organizers, would also like to acknowledge the importance of the French language, but we do not have the ability to moderate in French. So we're hosting this in English only. And before we start talking to the candidates, thought I would go over what federal council does very briefly. And they're responsible for the strategic decisions of the party, and it's akin to a governing board for some organizations. It decides on how resources are allocated. Federal council does not decide on policy. And you can find out more details at greenparty.ca. Members should have already received a link to the ballot by mail, and for each position you rank the candidates. So it's important to not only decide on who your top pick is, but who your second, third, and so on choices. On the Green Party website, there are bios of each candidate as well as job descriptions, and I encourage everyone to check those out as well. I am now going to pass the speaking over to Mike Morrice. He was the Kitchener Centre candidate in last year's federal election. Mike.
Thanks, Teresa, and hi everyone, welcome. Really glad. I want to start by just saying thank you to all of the candidates who are with us this evening. Really appreciate you all making time to chat with some folks across Waterloo Region. We know this is a busy time for you all, and the fact that you all were willing to join us for this call really means a lot. So thanks for doing that. Also wanted to say thanks to Teresa, Mats, and Johan for organizing this. This is, well, we all know this is a really important time for the party, and it's really critical that we have good governance for the party now more than ever. And unless people have the information they need to make their choices, we're going to be a much more challenging position to maintain good governance for the party. So thanks, Teresa. Thanks, Mats. Thanks, Johan, for organizing this and making sure it happened. I'm really looking forward to the conversation as well. Like other members across Waterloo region, I've been following along over the past several months in this process, and really feel kind of lucky to have a chance to hear from many of the candidates on this call. So thanks again for making time to be here. For myself, I'll note I've got a family Zoom call later this evening, so I'll be if I leave before the session's over, it's not because I'm offended or upset. It's because I need to listen to my nieces and nephews and enjoy some time with them. So with that, yeah, thank you again for everyone being here, and I'll pass it back to Matt.
Thank you, Mike, for giving us a good introduction. And also thanks to everyone for joining in today. It's great to be able to follow the discussions today. We just have one point of interest that Michael brought up. I noticed during Teresa's introduction and Mike's that the connection was a little bit choppy. So if anyone who's just watching today, so not the candidates, but just any observers, if you could turn off your video just so that we save some bandwidth. Great, thank you. So Teresa's posted the order of the candidates in the chat window. So you can always refer to that for the order of candidates and for the question that's currently being asked. So for the introductions, we're going to start with Adrian, then Eric Gilmore, Andrew, Eric LaRouche, Michael, Lorraine, and Henry. This is just the Ontario reps that will be introducing themselves. We'll go through the Q&A and some closing remarks before we go to the other positions. So with that, we'll start with Adrian. Could you please introduce yourself and just in there also add how life has changed for you just in the past few weeks due to the coronavirus situation?
Okay, thank you for this opportunity. So my name is Adrian Curry. As you know, the lack of diversity within our party structures and the absence of a diversity strategy is a serious impediment to our growth as a party. If we don't address this issue in this federal election, when will we? Do we as a party have the courage to put our money where our mouth is and elect diverse candidates and people of color to the federal council? There are many people in the Green Party of Canada who want to see the party grow. If one of our goals is growing the party, then this is an obvious weakness that we have to address. And how has my life changed during COVID? Oh man, it's just been Zoom call after Zoom call. It seems I'm more busy now than ever. Thank you.
Thanks. Next up, we'll have Eric Gilmore.
Hi, my name is Eric Gilmore. I'm from currently living in Ottawa on unceded Algonquin and Anishinaabe territory. I've been incredibly fortunate to be able to work from home for these past 6 weeks. But that's changed. One thing that's changed a lot for me. I also live on the 9th floor of an apartment building, but I'm now terrified of elevators. So I've been doing a lot more stairs than I ever have before in my life. But that's fortunately getting easier and easier as these weeks go by.
Great, thank you. Next up, we'll have Andrew.
Hi everyone, I'm Andrew Hazen. I'm calling in from Markham, where I've been a volunteer organizer across the 3 ridings in Markham for a year and a half or so. Biggest change because of COVID is that we had a mad scramble at one point to get my son home from the UK, where he was doing a semester abroad, and the adventure of trying to actually get him on a flight, and then he had to spend a couple weeks somewhere else in quarantine. That was definitely interesting.
Next up, we have Eric LaRouche.
Yes, hello everyone. Nice to meet you all again tonight. I'm involved with the Green because of the kids mainly right now, with the climate change and lack of action from the last 50 years by the government that were put in place by ourselves. So I hope to be able to affect some of the trend and improve unifying people and motivating the Green Party. We have Oh, as for the COVID, basically, I'm missing the chance to see people as regularly as I did before. That's all. Thank you.
Michael?
Hello, everybody. I'm Mike Pilling. I'm from Thunder Bay. I used to live in Toronto. I've been a Green Party member for a little over 20 years now and had lots of chance to see council operating in various forms. In COVID times, you know what the best, most amazing thing is homeschooling my teenager in math and being able to connect with her. And, you know, she's learned that I know a few things, and it's been really a joy to work closely with her on that.
Next up, we have Lorraine.
Hi, everyone. I'm coming to you from Algonquin Territory. My name is Lorraine Reckmans, and I've been with the Green Party since 2008. I'm the Shadow Cabinet Critic for Indigenous Affairs. I just want to say I'm a small business owner, and we're an essential service, and we're down a few people. So there's been a lot of pressure on me to step up and pitch in to help my husband at the garage. So it's been a very busy time. It's been a very stressful time for us as a small business owner, and we'll be glad when we can get back to some sort of normalcy.
Thank you. And last up, we have Henry. Oh, you're on mute, Henry. Just a sec.
Okay. There we go. Okay, I'm Henry Wright. I was born in Ontario. I have a business degree, senior management positions in both profit and nonprofit. The reason I'm running is because I believe that the federal council needs to be more open, transparent, and communicate with party members better. I think also that we need to stop talking amongst each other and need to start talking and building on our successes. And I bring 35 years of experience in politics in both municipal, federal, and provincial politics. And what has changed for me a lot in the COVID is meeting with my granddaughters. I miss them a lot, even though we Zoom.
Great, thank you all for giving some introductions. We're going to go into the meat of the discussion. First question will be for Michael. And just a reminder to all the other candidates that you'll have a chance to piggyback on these questions by playing your joker, by raising your hand in the Zoom window. And Teresa will be noting down your names and typing the order of participants in the chat window. So we'll go through the other candidates as they've raised their hand. But please please raise your hand during the first candidate's answer. So we'll start with Michael. The first question. Sorry, just bear with me for a second. First question is, in 2016, the Green Party chose to use the passive Carver model as opposed to the more active working board model. How do you look at the issue that federal council members have limited communication with EDAs? And just a reminder, you have a minute and a half to answer each question.
Well, having observed council for a long time, I think that our federal council for the GPC has had a difficult time for a long time, for decades. And I think that these problems even preceded Elizabeth May's leadership. I think they actually preceded Jim Harris's leadership. We have had, I think, a lack of expertise, a lack of experience on council. And one of the things that developed over the years was that staff were feeling that they were getting directions from all sides. There wasn't really enough organization and discipline in our chain of command, as it were. So when they switched to the Carver model in 2016, I think they were trying to fix some important problems that they had at the time. However, I think what has evolved is something that is one of those unintended consequences. The federal councillors are currently being asked to sign these strict confidentiality agreements so that they really feel like their hands are tied and they aren't allowed to communicate freely with members or EDAs. And there has been no structure in place to formalize the communication between council and the EDAs. So in the last few years, we've had a real problem where council is fairly isolated from the rest of the membership. And I think that's really something that we have to change in this upcoming election. And I hear a tremendous amount of enthusiasm that we're going to fix the problems on council and get better communication across the party. Thank you. Can't hear you, Matt.
Sorry, thank you. Thanks for the answer. I didn't see any hands raised. So unless somebody speaks up, we'll head over to the, thanks, Andrew.
No, there are hands raised.
Sure.
Yes, we have Henry and Andrew with their hands raised.
Okay, we'll go in that order. Henry, do you want to answer first?
Sure. I think there's a lot been made out of this issue, and I think there's nothing wrong with the Carver model itself. And as a matter of fact, it's widely used for nonprofits, regardless of what some other candidates are saying. It's widely used and very well respected in nonprofits. I think that the essence of the whole thing is that the council, through governance, have to remember that they're there to serve the party members, not the other way around, not to hide things. Confidentiality exists, should exist, and should only be used when there's a personnel matter or something like this. Councillors should be able to talk to the EDAs, but at the same time, council should not be involved in the day-to-day decisions that are made operating the Green Party. And I think that's where some of the conflict comes in. Some councillors today want to be able to say, we should hire or fire these staff, and it shouldn't be that way. And I think that's where a big problem comes out, but the councillors should be able to talk to members because that's why they're there. They're there to support the members. They're there because the members put them there. And so the Carver model itself is fine. I think it's a matter of how it's been interpreted and how some current councillors have overstepped their boundaries.
Thank you. We'll go over to Andrew.
Hi, thanks. The Carver model is used in a lot of places, but it was never envisioned for an organization with a very strong membership grassroots element. It's great for having a professional board that oversees a very staff-driven organization. So insofar as the Carver model helps federal council in its relationship to staff, it's probably fine. However, what its current interpretation seems to have prevented or not allowed for is the role of the federal council in helping to develop the rest of the party, the membership, the EDAs, maintaining the communication so that everybody's in the loop as to where the party's going and how to plug into those strategies. And even when you look at the handbook that was written from the Carver model for the federal council, it explicitly says you're not even allowed to have a committee that talks to a staff. Whereas I would suggest that what we need are operating committees that help staff do their job by leveraging them and helping them make additional connections and putting volunteer skills to work to help the staff do what they were supposed to do.
Great, thank you. And I saw Lorraine also put up her hand.
Yeah, I think I just want to talk to the part of the question that deals with the communications with EDA. And I think part of my commitment as the Ontario rep is to work closely with the EDAs. I really believe we have to build strong EDAs and communication across all parts of our party, including membership, EDAs, shadow cabinet, federal council. We have to, we really have to have open lines of communication so that we're able to send a consistent message in national campaigns. So I've worked with a lot of boards. I've worked on boards of directors for nonprofits, and I've worked as an executive director. So I've been on the other side, on the staff side. And my sense has always been with boards is that you have your nose in, but your fingers out. So you know what's going on. And I'm going to reiterate something that I said in the earlier webinar, and that's that I actually believe we are going to need everyone. We're going to need everyone in the next campaign, because we are going to be facing a new world where there is limited funding available. And we're going to have to work more efficiently, and we're going to have to work differently.
Thanks, everyone. I think that's it for the first question. Didn't see any other hands raised. So we'll go to the second question. And this one will be for Eric Gilmore to start, and anyone who wants to raise their hand can join in after. The question is, the Green Party has been criticized for not having much diversity. What strategies do you propose to address this issue? So Eric Gilmore, you're up first.
So the first place we can start is electing a federal council that is more diverse. I think in the outgoing federal council, we had more people named Dave than we had people of color, which is not a slight against everyone named Dave. That's not their fault. It just goes to show the kind of lack of diversity. And this, we have this in pretty much every dimension. We have this with a lack of youth on federal council, lack of people of color, lack of Indigenous peoples. And the best way to improve diversity is to have more diverse power structures and representatives. And that also includes having more diverse candidates. I think in the Young Greens chat last night, they mentioned that we had one of the least diversely of candidates in the 2019 election of all the major parties. So this is something that, I first learned a few years ago talking to the New Zealand Greens as part of the Committee for Motion Development. They said, to engage their Maori population, their Indigenous population, they had to bring them into the party and put them in positions of power and run them as candidates. And it created that culture where, they could see people that looked like themselves, and it was, much more friendly and welcoming environment for them. And we don't have that right now in the party. So that's where we have to focus our attention is, on every committee, on every power structure, on every EDA. We need a diverse range of people of color, youth, men and women, non-binary, LGBT, every equity-seeking group.
Thanks, Eric. I saw Lorraine put up her hand. And just a reminder, you just have the two jokers, everyone, to answer two questions.
Okay, I think I'm wearing this headset, but I don't know if it's working.
Yes, we can hear you very clear.
Okay, you can hear me. I think it's interesting, that I'm the only Indigenous woman on the ballot in Ontario, and I think it's interesting that I'm the only woman on the ballot in Ontario. My experience in politics has been a lot of firsts. In 2005, I was the first Indigenous woman to run for the regional chief of Ontario. I do agree with what Eric has said, is people, you have to see yourself. You have to see yourself somewhere. And as an Indigenous woman, I didn't see myself anywhere inside the Green Party. I've made proposals at different discussions early on in the party with respect to Indigenous people's membership, that if we recognize Indigenous people on a nation-to-nation basis, then we must make a provision for them to have membership in that capacity, looking at them as international nations rather than including them in the party as the Canadian citizenry at large. So there are ways to accommodate Indigenous sovereignty, nation-to-nation relationships, and make special provisions inside the party for Indigenous participation. I think that's in keeping with the way the world is going with regards to UNDRIP, respect for Indigenous rights and sovereignty. And that's something that other parties certainly aren't talking about. I mean, the Greens can be really innovative. And again, I see the yellow card, but we have to make room for people, and they have to be able to see themselves in the party, and they have to be able to see a future for themselves in the party. Thanks.
Thanks, Lorraine. And did I see Adrian's hand up as well? You're just on mute right now, Adrian. Oh, you're still on mute.
Is that better?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so yes, this is an issue that's very important for the Green Party. Canada as a country is very, very diverse, and it's one of our strengths. And as Eric just said, in the last election, the Green Party were the least diverse of candidates. This issue needs to be addressed. But the question is, how are we going to do it? As I said during my opening remarks, do we as the party have the courage to put our money where our mouth is and elect diverse candidates? I mean, right now we have an opportunity to elect diversity to the federal council. I mean, as Lorraine said, she's the only diverse woman. She's the only woman, and for myself, I'm the only person of color right now running for federal councils from Ontario representative. So, I mean, how do we solve this problem? We need a diversity policy or strategy, and we need diversity training, whether we can implement this or not in this upcoming federal council term. But what are we going to do? I mean, do we start endorsing diverse candidates right now for this federal council election and put forward a couple names because it's a ranked ballot system, or do we just continue as a status quo and just speak eloquently on the issue but then don't act? That's the question that we face as a party. Are we going to be resourceful and resolute and take action?
Thank you. Great answers, all of you. We're going to move on to the third question. This one will be posed to Lorraine.
Oh, can I just interrupt?
Yes.
Please put up your hand during the first person's answer, and that not as people go on.
So we have the first question, or the third question for Lorraine. If you notice that staff or the federal council is not following the democratic ideals of the Green Party, how do you propose to address the issue?
Well, I mean, that is a personnel issue, but at the outset, I do believe we all have a commitment to, to our principles and values in our mission statement. I think even as a candidate, as a federal candidate, we had to sign on to a commitment to uphold the principles of the Green Party. I would expect that staff are required to do the same. And I do believe that if there is an issue, then the executive director has to fulfill the executive director's responsibilities in managing staff, managing personnel. Thank you. Do I have more time?
You do, yes, yeah.
Yeah, I don't talk a lot. I say what I have to say, and then I'm usually done.
That's okay. I was just checking over the list to see who had put their hands up. Michael, did you want to jump in on this question?
Sure thing. Very quickly on this one, this is a problem right now, in that I think that the federal council and the executive director and the president, I think they have been inside a bubble. And I don't think that they have been properly referencing the Green Party's values with respect to their decisions. Frankly, I think they got the rules for the leadership contest wrong, in that they did not follow our traditions of transparency, and they did not follow our traditions of social justice by setting such a high entry fee and a high expense limit for this campaign. So I think we definitely do need reform. That's why I think the Greens for Council group has all agreed that we need to get back to our values. So I think there are reforms required. Very quickly on the diversity issue, this is something I agree that is critically important for all of our ridings. And I think it's one thing that we're going to have to seriously look at is devoting our party's resources to recruiting new members from diverse backgrounds. I think it is absolutely important that we get persons of diverse backgrounds at high levels in the party. But I think it's absolutely important that we have to devote real resources to getting recruitment going, and I'm recommending on campuses, because that gives us a reach into both younger and more diverse backgrounds all across Ontario and all across Canada. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Michael. And we noticed that Eric LaRouche put up his hand as well during the first question.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I'm a little bit surprised with the answer from Lorraine. Lorraine, you've been around for a while in the Federal Council, I understand. There's a process in place. It's stipulated in your constitution and the bylaws. And if somebody...
Oh, I noticed you just got put on mute, Eric. Just a second while we sort that out. Can you try speaking?
Yeah, I'm
okay,
on?
yes, we can hear you again. Go
okay, should I start over?
No, you can continue where you left off.
Okay, so there's a process in place. And I believe since the beginning I've been involved with this election, and prior to this election, I realized there's a lack of knowledge. A lot of people don't seem to know what the Constitution and the bylaws are, and they definitely don't know how to use them. And they're in place. So I believe that if someone is stepping out of his level of authority, well, there's someone in charge somewhere in the Federal Council to simply address that by talking to that individual and looking at where we are with the infraction, with the problem, and trying to solve it, clearly, peacefully. And if everybody understands the rules and the processes, it's a lot clearer. I think that's pretty simple. It's right there in your bylaws and the Constitution. That's all.
Thank you, Eric. This is maybe a bit improvised, but since you had half a minute left on the clock, Lorraine, if there's anything you'd like to rebut, you're welcome to, or we can continue with the next question.
No, I think I just take it for granted that the Constitution and bylaws are there. And I mean, there's two parts to this question. One is with respect to staff, and I understand that Federal Council doesn't have any direct authority over staff. So that's why I said I would rely on the executive director to take action when it's required. And of course, Federal Council, I do believe we have to go back to our values. The world needs the Green Party now more than it ever did. And it's the values that they need. It's what we bring to politics. And we say we're going to do it differently. And we have to start doing it differently internally. We have to go back to basics, look at what makes us distinct and different, and uphold our principles.
Thank you, Lorraine. For the fourth question, we have Andrew up first. And Andrew, the question for you is, what does success for the Green Party look like to you at the end of 2021 and at the end of the next election?
Okay, thanks. Great question. So the thing that keeps going through my mind with all of this is, paraphrasing the original Clinton campaign, it's the climate, stupid. And if we're not making progress on the environmental issues and climate change, then, we might as well be in the NDP or the Liberals or what have you. So what the Green Party success looks like for me in a couple of years from now is, for one thing, much stronger and more active EDAs. Someone said a little while ago, if you haven't won the election before the writ drops, you're not going to win it after the writ drops. We have to have our EDAs active, getting the message out and connecting with other folks in their area right now. You know, the next campaign starts now. And if we do that right, then what the Green Party looks like after the next campaign is we've got enough people in Ottawa that we really get listened to. I think our 3 caucus members now are doing an amazing job of getting themselves listened to during this COVID crisis, where unanimity of approach actually gives them a little more leverage. Hopefully after the next election, we have a dozen people there and we have real resources to work with. But I think we have to get busy on the ground now for the next 2 to 3 years to make that happen.
Great, thank you, Andrew. And we also have Eric Gilmore up to answer this question.
So 2021 might be the next election. We just don't know. But I think it's a great question, because I think there's 2 kind of aspects to it. First is, you know, our more tangible results. Yes, we want to increase our seats. We want more Canadians voting for us. We want more media attention. But I think something else, you know, needs to be done. We need a better target, and we need to be a party that really engages our volunteers and our members, and is a healthy volunteer / work environment for our members and volunteers, and where people, the grassroots, can contribute earnestly to our efforts and feel valued. And, you know, a party that really just lives out its green values and practices what we preach. We have, you know, a lot of work to do in bringing volunteers together and, you know, building that environment. And I think that's one of the important goals we need to have for the next election for 2021, because that will bring us to the other successes. You know, when we have volunteers that don't get pushed away by toxic environments, or volunteers that feel at home and members that feel at home in the party and they see themselves represented, those are things that will bring us electoral success, bring us the more seats in Parliament, bring us the more media attention, bring us the trust of Canadian voters in the next election.
Great, thank you, Eric. We're going to go on to the next. Oh, Eric Lewis, I see your hand up.
Yeah,
Okay.
I did, yeah.
Okay, sorry. Go ahead.
I just wanted to add to what Eric Gilmore just said. I agree entirely with Eric. In regard of after the next election, what I'd like to see the Green Party to be better off with would be, to get there, we need to find out what are our limits, and to work toward having people concentrate on those limits, because we cannot accomplish everything. And we need to convince people to get on board with the platform by making it better understood. And I think if we'll be successful after the next election, if more people would be on board with it, because if you look at Germany, if you look around the world, there's a lot of positive change. They had better success than what we had compared, let's say, with 2019, which was fairly disappointing on the national level anyway. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. So we'll go on to the 5th question. This one will be posed to Henry. And the question is, what do you think is the most underrepresented issue that is important to Green Party members?
Well, there's a loaded one. Talking off the top here. Most underrepresented issue. Well, I think that diversity rates right up there. I think that I think there's a different approach we can take to climate change that would help us sell it better. So I'm wallowing around here, as you can tell. But I think that if we were to sell climate change slightly differently, and I know I've taken a different spin on it. I think if we were to say, everybody knows that the Green Party is the one who talked climate change and knows more about climate change and the environmental issues. But if we were to perhaps do it a different way and say, everybody knows we're in charge of climate change, but we have a good plan about job growth. We have a good plan for the economy and climate change. And sort of reverse the order a touch. Always having climate change up there, but if we prove to them that the electorate, that we have all these other policies in place that are great policies. I came from another party and I was absolutely surprised at the length and breadth of the policies that the party does have. And so I think if we just turn them off a bit onto their side and say, we have this plan for healthcare and climate change, for jobs and climate change. That's the end of my.
Thank you, Henry. I just want to address, please don't use the chat to give answers to the questions that have been posed as well, just because it's distracting from some of the people that are speaking. So maybe afterwards we can provide a platform if you have more elaborate answers on the questions, and we can share those with people viewing after the fact. Do you have something in response to that, Eric?
Yeah, I'd like a chance, if it's okay. There's two things we can look at.
If it's on the topic of the question, I think you've used up your two jokers.
Yeah, it's relating to your question.
I think you've used up your two jokers, Eric.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, that's why I'm kind of.
Yeah.
Begging.
So any extra comments we'll collect after the fact, and we'll let you share your thoughts with viewers that way.
Thank you.
So I think we'll move on to question 6. Is that
No, we have Michael and Andrew.
Oh, I'm sorry. Let's see. And this was question 5. So we'll have Andrew first. Is that right? Andrew, if you'd like to answer the question.
Yeah, I think underrepresented issues from the membership. I would say there's two things that I've heard. One is that members and other voters want to have a strong sense that Greens are effective and viable. You know, you constantly hear, well, I'm probably just throwing my vote away to vote Green. And I think we need to do a way better job of communicating to members and through the general media just how effective Green votes are. Like our 3 caucus members, you know, Mike Schreiner in Ontario, the folks in PEI, they are doing a bang up job, even with small representation. And we've got to communicate out that even having 1 or 2 Green members is really effective. And the other thing in terms of members who want to volunteer is that they're looking for something to plug into. You know, no one wants to respond to a volunteer request and say, okay, you're making it up as you go along. They want to know that there's strategy and tools and templates. So there's something they can pick up and run with that plugs into and reinforces the general strategies of the party. And I think that's been desperately missing. And that's something that federal council can take a role in working through the new ED and taking on a bit of a mobilizer role ourselves as provincial reps to try and get more of that happening.
Sorry. Thank you, Andrew. And next up, we have Michael.
All righty. Well, I'm going to interpret this question as regarding this federal council election. And the most underreported fact is that this federal council election is actually happening. We had a big problem working with the federal council and the administration to get the word out about this election. Any information about the election didn't appear on the website, the federal website, until April 1st, I believe. And that was when voting had already started. There was effectively 0 campaign days in this election before before voting started. And I think that's a problem. I think that we need to have more time for all of these great candidates. And we have fabulous candidates in Ontario. There's a lot to pick from, and then there's a lot of issues, because anybody who has read the Members for Growth and Renewal report, which even a lot of members yet haven't heard about because there's been so little time allotted for this election, there are tons of important issues that our members have a right to know about, but I think they have been kind of kept in the dark by federal council. And as the president himself told me, this election was made as short as physically possible given our bylaws. And I don't think that members have had enough time to think about it. And I think our EDA executives have really been put under the gun. So I think when we do this again, we're going to have much more information flowing to our members on a regular basis. We need a newsletter. We need, lots of communication flowing about what council is doing to our membership and to our EDAs.
Great, thank you. So I just want to remind candidates, you have 2 jokers total, and we have 2 questions left. So for some of you, this might be the last chance to answer a question. We have Eric LaRouche up for this next question. The question is, in Waterloo Region, we have worked together with the 5 ridings as Waterloo Region Greens. Describe what you know about regional collaboration, and if you support that idea, how would you make sure there are resources for this type of organizing within the party?
Can you repeat your question? At the beginning, you were broken on my computer.
Oh, yes. Here in Waterloo Region, we have 5 ridings, and we've been working together as one organization called Waterloo Region Greens. And similarly, there's a new initiative to start regional collaboration. So the question is if you support that idea, and how would you make sure that there are resources for this type of organizing within the party?
Yeah, thank you. It's a very good question about collaboration. I believe, like, if you want to collaborate with any other groups, there need to be good communication and clear understanding of what is the goal you hope to have. And then by communicating properly in between those organizations, you can define which area you want to concentrate and prioritize. It could be in your funding. It could be in supply, like aquarium equipment or sharing equipment, or using social media a little bit differently or more together, or having conversation like we do right now online, which are a lot more popular today than they were only like 4 or 5 weeks ago. They're really, really powerful if they're well structured. And I think the message, the communication will help the collaboration. And if you have collaboration, you'll avoid gaps, you'll avoid duplication, so wasting time and money on different things, because now you're coordinating, you're collaborating together, you're stronger together. And it's just gonna help for whatever objective you have to meet those goals that you prioritize, which one is number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4. Yeah, it's key. It's a key. It's used at the UN level. It's used at the corporate level with different companies working sometimes together in the same sector, or the same company divided with satellite groups, training or sharing ideas together. Very, very effective. Yeah.
Thank you, Eric. I don't think anyone put up their hand for this one. Is that correct? So we'll move on to the last question. This one will be posted. Adrian. Adrian, how do you propose to listen to issues that EDAs have, and how do you propose to take these back to federal council?
How do I propose to listen to issues that ADAs have? Well, to start off, you ask them what they care about. You send out questionnaires. Call them up. You just keep the lines of communications open. How do you propose to listen to EDAs and take this back to the federal council? This is a great question for Michael, because they really care about the EDAs. I've already gave you the answer. It's so simple. You ask them what they want. You reach out to them. You listen to them. You find out what their members are, what their members care about, and then how do you listen to this case and take these and take it back to federal council? Yeah, you take it back to federal council. And to take it back to federal council. Yeah, this is. I think I've already spoken too much. It's not complicated. I'm finished.
Okay, thank you. And I see Eric putting up his hand, but maybe you can address it in your closing remarks. Let's see. And I don't think anyone has put up their hand for that last question. Is that right?
Eric Gilmore does.
Okay, Eric, yes, go ahead.
So one of the things that I find really important is those personal connections. And it's going to be really important to maintain those with our EDA executives. Many different ways to do that. Some people have different preferences. Post COVID-19, I'd really love to do it in person. I'm really a big fan of going out to other EDAs, AGMs, and seeing what's going on there. And that's something I did beforehand. Before I was running for this, I would go to neighboring ridings, help out with their AGMs, sometimes attend their executive meetings. And that's really important. I really want to propose that federal council get a travel budget for all federal council members so they can go to different regions of their province and attend AGMs and have in-person meetings, again, post-COVID-19, with the different members in their constituency, because that's really important, those personal relationships. In lieu of that, things like Zoom meetings, monthly or quarterly calls with everybody, leverage phone calls as well. I've gotten very good at going through call lists in past election experiences, make use of that. Also, of course, my inbox would always be open, and I'd hope to have some sort of proactive communication as well, and, blogs, Twitters, email lists, things like that.
Thank you. Thanks everyone for the insightful answers. Some differing opinions, but I think in general, the key values are the same. We have 1.5 minutes for everyone to give some closing remarks. So Teresa's posted the order for the closing remarks in the chat window. We'll start with Michael. You have 1.5 minutes just to address anything that you feel you haven't been able to address so far, and make a pitch for why you think people should vote for you.
All right. Well, first of all, I'm going to admit that I'm up against a fabulous lineup of other candidates, and I really look forward to working with all of you guys after these elections. I have 20 years experience in the party, and I have seen the mistakes that are currently happening now happen before, and I have great ideas how to solve them. I would really recommend that everyone check out the Members for Growth and Renewal report, because not all the candidates on, of this 8 are in favor of making changes that are recommended by that group. But so it's really an important question to be asking your potential representatives. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Next up, we'll have Lorraine. We can't hear you, Lorraine. It's strange, you're unmuted, but we don't hear you. Still can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, so I have to say that I'm really pleased to be on the ballot with so many great candidates, and I really appreciate the energy that everybody brings and the commitment and the work that people have done to make this party a better party. So miigwech to my colleagues on the ballot, thank you. I just want to say that I am committed to working just in concert with the principles and values of the Green Party to move us forward without conflict, to look at respectful ways to resolve differences that people may have on council. I am committed to changing the world with kindness at every level, in every forum that I participate in. I do my best to advocate for positive change. I understand there's a lot of problems, but I also understand there's a lot at stake. As a grandmother, I recognize, a lot of history, and I know how the future looks. So I really believe that we have to get it right, that the Green Party has to get it right. at every level. Our candidates, our federal council, our EDAs, that we have to work together. This is our time. The world has set the table for us. The world has set the table for us, and we have every policy to respond to these emerging crises. My hope is that Canadians wake up and recognize what the Green Party is all about, what the Green Party stands for, and how we can contribute to making this a better country. But we have to start working with each other in relationships that are based out of love and respect for each other. And my commitment is to bring that to council.
Great, thank you. Next up, we have Henry.
Yes, I echo exactly what both Michael and Lorraine have said, and I know the other people think as well. I think it's a great field of candidates. I think that the one thing I would impress on everybody who's on this call is please vote. The whole thing is about voting. I don't care whether you vote for me or not, but please vote. Well, I do care whether you vote for me, but go out and vote. That's what it's all about. I wanted to pitch again, I guess, that I came to the Green Party from another party. I have over 35 years experience in the Green Party, about for 5 years, but I've worked municipally, federally, and provincially. And I think that I can help move us along to the next stage. I think we're now at a stage, when you think about going into the election last time, we went in with 1 seat, we came out with 3. 49 ridings got over 10%, which was huge for us. That gives us a base to work from. Over 162 ridings doubled their vote. It's just amazing how far the party has come. And we own the issue of environmental and climate change, but we have to prove to the Canadian public that we can deliver on it, that we have those sound policies, that we have the organization, and we involve the diversity and get going on it. So I think that it's very, very important that we move. Red or yellow, red, okay. I guess I'm about out of time. But I think it's important that we move on, and I bring my experience to bear on it. Please vote for Henry Wright.
Thank you. Next up, we have Adrian.
Okay. Thank you. This is a really important time for the Green Party, and governance is important more than ever. So far during this federal council election, the level of participation in the debates and webinars have been great, and the level of discussion online has been nothing short of phenomenal. The future looks great if it's any indicator. On federal council, I plan to lead by example and help attract other diverse candidates to the council and to the Green Party. I want to work with the council to identify and eliminate the systemic barriers to the participation of other equity-seeking groups, and to proactively seek out their participation in the governance of this party. If we don't address this issue in this federal election, when will we? Again, I say, do we as a party have the courage to put our money where our mouth is and elect diverse candidates and people of color to the federal council? If so, then we should lead by example and start now. Last week, I was part of a webinar on federal council policy put on by Dave Bagler. Curiously enough, the #1 priority on the list was diversity. Diversity on the federal council and having a diverse membership from which we can draw diverse candidates. There are many people in the Green Party of Canada who want to see the party grow. If one of our goals is growing the party, then this is an obvious weakness that we have to address. We have to create a culture of people that looks like themselves on every committee, on the EDAs, on federal council, and we have to make sure that equity-seeking groups are represented and have a voice. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Adrian. Next up, we have Eric Gilmore.
I'm somebody who has been with the party only a couple of years. The entire duration of my political experience, I've only been the Green Party supporter since I could start voting at 18. But I feel like I bring a very good mix of grassroots experience and campaign experience and governance experience to this role. I've worked on small campaigns. I've worked on large campaigns. I know what it felt like in 2019 to be left out in the cold working on a campaign. I've had experience with the Committee on Motion Developments on a grassroots project. I've even had experience on the board of the Green Party of Ontario in a very similar governance position. And I think these are some of the experiences that are going to make me a very robust councillor for Ontarians, especially as somebody who's experienced what it's like to be a Green Party member in many different parts of the province, from Central Ontario, Northern Ontario, Eastern Ontario. I've unfortunately have not had much time in Southwestern Ontario, especially in Kitchener. So I'm sorry, guys. I plan to add you to my list, and I hope to bring those experiences, but with also with a fresh look. I haven't been around for decades. I can think outside the box. I don't have these entrenched biases. I really think it's important to have more youth on federal council. We've heard from our youth representatives that they don't feel supported by federal council, and I think it's really important to elect more youth to these structures so we can support youth. You can check out my full bio and CV at ericgilmore.ca, and also have lots of contact information there as well if you have any further questions. Thanks.
Thanks, Eric. Next up, we have Andrew.
Again, thanks. So I want to start with just why I'm involved in this to begin with. I'm not a politician. I'm involved because I stay awake at night thinking about what the world is going to be like when my kids and hopefully my grandkids are growing up. The issues are urgent, and if we're going to make the changes necessary for our kids and our grandkids, we all know we've got about 10 years to make significant changes. And that means the next election is beyond critical. And that means that the next 2 or 3 years of the Green Party of Canada is the most important period this party's ever had. And we're going to be going into that with a new executive director with some, looks like an amazing resume of experience. We're going to be selecting a new leader for the first time in 13 years. And that person is going to have big shoes to fill, but they'll also have an opportunity to really take us forward to the next stage of growth. And this federal council is going to be the group that backs all that up and connects all that back to the EDAs and the grassroots, which is where we've been winning our elections. So I think the federal council is really critical for this. A previous question was about regional collaboration, and I think that's absolutely critical as well. It's the way I've been working in Markham. And as Michael mentioned, everyone needs to know about and read the MG&R report, and I'm looking forward to hearing its final report as well. So I'm here for the future. Vote for Andrew Hazen.
Thank you, Andrew. And we have Eric LaRouche for his closing remarks.
Yeah, thank you for this session this evening, and everyone to participate. We need to earn more seats. We need to have a seat at the table to make sure that those great policies in our platform are looked at. We've seen the last 50 years, it's not happening. The last election was okay, but as near as anyone would have expected, especially with the climate change publicity that was, well captivated by all Canadians, like 94% of the Canadians understand it, but they're not ready to, do the hard things because they're worried, they have concerns. So as a member of the Federal Council, I believe a huge part of my job would be to ensure that the Green and the EDAs clearly understand that we have what it takes. There's some rules, there's some guidance that we need to accept and work within that to attain our goals. And at the end of the day, we have a lot of work to do. It is challenging, but if we focus the right way, I believe we're going to attract more people. and it's just gonna improve. So there's more work to be done, definitely, and I'm willing to do it. So there you go. Thank you very much, everyone, for your participation.
Thank you, Eric. Thanks to all the Ontario reps for the effort that you've put into your campaigns. I guess May 1st will be the last chance for people to vote. And regardless of the outcome, I think we're going to have a great representative for all Ontarians. And yeah, I'm excited to see where everyone's path leads. That being said, that was all the discussion for the Ontario reps. I see that Kate and Darcy have joined us as well. So we'll move on to the discussions for the national positions, and Teresa will take the lead on these ones. Oh, Lorraine?
Oh, I think, are you just saying goodbye?
Yes, we have to turn our camera off. You're going into the next session.
Yeah, if other people wouldn't mind, the Ontario reps wouldn't mind turning off their cameras, and the fund reps and the VP English turn on their cameras.
Because I noticed a few times people's internet and dropping out and rejoining. So yeah, so just a brief overview is we'll do the VP first and their candidates and questions and final pitch, and then we'll switch over to fund representative, and there's 3 questions for each candidate. John, if you want to give a brief introduction, a 30-second sort of pitch, and how your life has changed since COVID has hit in the last 6 weeks or so.
Sure. You hear me clearly?
Yes.
Okay. I'm John Kidder. I'm running for VP. My life has changed in this COVID thing in a number of ways. I'm newly aware of the effect that a small group of Greens can have on federal policy. It's remarkable to see things like guaranteed livable income being part of a national debate. It's amazing to see that the things that we've been proposing for a long time for just transition off fossil fuels are now being enacted. Most importantly, we're seeing a change in the way people feel about a compassionate, kind of a caring society. And I think that's a fundamental Green value. And I think it's something that will serve us all well as we move out of this crisis. Thanks.
Hello, everyone. Sorry, I was a bit late to the party. So things have changed for me. Well, we're in Prince Edward Island, so we have the model here. 26 cases, all but 2 are recovered. We're looking to open some businesses. Luckily, mine is going to be one of them, not this Monday, but the following Monday. So thank you for that. I've had a very small circle of people. I've not been spending as much time online, perhaps as others, because I'm also renovating a house into an apartment building. So I'm getting a lot of physical activity. Thank you. Oh, hello, Will Allen. Welcome. Okay, hi.
Okay. So for question 1, Darcy answers this first. How do you suggest we grow the party in provinces and areas that we are not historically strong?
Well, we've been doing quite a lot of that in Atlantic Canada, so I think we're a good model. Prince Edward Island was so partisan when I first became a Green that we couldn't get a sign put up, because if you put a green sign on your lane, very good chance your plow operator would not plow it for you the following winter. When I first put my name on a ballot, my good Liberal friends came over and told me that I was destroying my life, and not just mine, but the lives of my children as well. So I think you can overcome that hyper partisan politics by just being green, because really, when you look at the policies, they're so sensible. when you look at the people who are standing in front of them, they're so practical that that we have been turning this green wave on. So I would say that in the 2015 election, only one seat in Atlantic Canada got 10% of the vote, and that seat now has a Green MP. In this election, 20 out of 24 maritime seats got 10% of the vote. That's going to make a very significant difference in the next election. So in Atlantic Canada, it's been working well. Of course, we haven't cracked the code in Newfoundland and Labrador, and I'm hoping we do that soon. Even though there was some improvement, it was certainly nothing like Nova Scotia PEI and New Brunswick.
John?
Well, I think the model, Darcy's quite right. I think the model is collaboration, as he's talked about with the Ontario reps. We're seeing a lot of people across the country now saying that the federal party should be more engaged with the provincial parties. They should be more engaged in places where we've got municipal parties, and that we should all be more engaged with the international Greens. And I think that's the true thing. I think the thing that the Green Party has, which distinguishes us from every other political party in this country, is that we are in fact part of a true international movement. And we need to be able to start to bring that to people more, I think, than we have in the past. We see a lot of strength in BC. I was one of the founders of the BC Green Party, but that was in 1983 that we started to do this. That's an awful long time ago. But it means we got a strong historical base to work from. We're seeing it. We're seeing it in Atlantic Canada. We're seeing it in Ontario. We're seeing it across the country, in Quebec. We're seeing a whole lot of people coming to a green sensibility and a green understanding. And I think if we promote what is in the nature of Greens, which is collaboration, consensus building, talking to each other, and we do that in the context of a genuine international movement, and we make people aware that they're doing this with people in Germany, Denmark, New Zealand, it's all part of the same family, then I believe we can make some pretty substantial progress. And I want to thank all the people who've been working on this for all these years, because by golly, the fruits of that are there for us to work on. Thanks.
Okay. Question 2, John, you get to answer this one first. This year is a historic year worldwide with the global pandemic and within the party with the leadership convention. What are your ideas on the best way to position the Green Party between now and December?
I'm still unmuted. Okay. I think the best way for starters is to get people together on council with an understanding of how you work in consensus and moving forward. Then getting discussions going with the ED to make sure that we can strengthen the links with the whole party so that that's well understood. And at least as important, being able to deal with whoever is elected as the new leader. To have the new leader come in and understand that there is a strong, unified team. With a unified team of leadership, and with a real serious work from council to engage with members and with EDAs, I think we can add a whole lot of strength that'll start to build that up. I think we have to move to convention in a way that we can come out of convention with a sense of unity and a sense of victory. I've been calling for some time for us to have a movement to kind of revisit our vision and our values from the ground up. I think we've lost sight of them a little bit. They're all written all over the place, but our members are no longer quite so clear as to what's holding us all together. So I think we need to do that. I think we need to have a hard look at what happened during the election so we can get a clear understanding of our strategy going forward. And most of all, we need to come to convention, whether it's virtual or real, whatever the kind of convention it is, with a sense of unity, of unification. And it's going to be reunification and re-engagement with grassroots, with young people, with equity-seeking people all across the country. Thanks.
Darcy, same question to you.
Can you read me that question again?
Sure. This year is a historic year worldwide with the global pandemic and within the party with the leadership convention. What are your ideas on the best way to position the Green Party between now and December? And questions we have been posting in the chat as well. Anyone
Okay. Oh, thank you. I didn't realize that.
Yeah, that's fine.
Again, I'm late. Yeah, so between now and December, I mean, there's a lot of big deadlines coming right up. Federal council elections are now. Then we have the next gate for the leadership race, the June 3rd date. And then of course we have the leadership race. Council's goal there must be to encourage as many people to participate as possible, to make it as exciting and interesting as possible. I think we're picking up a media sponsor on it coming right up, and then to get that word out, to amplify that message of the leaders, of the leadership candidates. Once we get our leader at the beginning of October, then the key goal will be to get them elected. That's the #1 priority of the Green Party of Canada, is to elect MPs. The #1 job with our new leader will be to get our new leader elected. Whether it's in a by-election, whether it's in a general election, that has to be job 1. So members make policy, federal council, and the other thing, of course, that's massively impacting our agenda is COVID having a big impact on our fundraising. So, you know, we have to do a lot, we have to do more with less as we go forward. Thank you.
Darcy, you get the next question. This is one for you. A lot of the members think that our party needs a change in direction. You are part of federal council as PEI representative and want to take more responsibility in a more influential position as VP. What is your motivation for wanting to run for VP English instead of your previous role as PEI representative? The ambition, frustration, influence for change?
No, none of those things. I served 2 terms as the PEI rep. During those 2 terms, we only had 4. So it's a pretty small job, maybe. It seems like a small job. We got 4 ADAs open. We have 4 financial agents. I used to be the only one. We have 4 CEOs. We have 4 fantastic candidates. I recruited the 4 candidates we ran in 2015. This time they recruited themselves. So that was a big step forward for us. I think we improved our election results 348% in 2015 over 2011 and 378% in 2019 over 2015. I think I've been doing exactly what a council rep should do for the province of Prince Edward Island, which is build the membership by about, well, tenfold at least, I think. Build the membership, get more people interested, raise the quality of the candidates, put money in it, make sure everybody's got money in their bank accounts. This is what I set out to do, and this is what I did. So the reason I've stepped up to VP is twofold, really. One, to make some more room for a new PEI rep, because people who hang out in positions forever just become set in their ways and stuck in their roles. So I wanted to create some space behind me. I wanted to move up because I think my experience in governance, on finance, and as the chair of the convention was a more national role. So I thought that was a great opportunity. I don't speak French. I'll never be the president of the Green Party, but I think this is a really good time for me to be vice president. I think we need a strong voice from the East Coast, where Greens are doing really well. I think we need a woman on the executive, and I think someone experienced. To just come in on the executive, I think I would never have done that.
Yeah. Okay, John, the next question's for you. With the decision of federal council to include all 3 MPs as non-voting members, you and your wife, Elizabeth May, would be part of the same board. Much of the work of VP on budgets, governance, staff, oversight, and evaluations would put you in a position of conflict of interest. This conflict of interest would mean not being able to chair a council meeting or committee, or to be involved in the majority of discussions at federal council. Have you proposed to be an effective member of federal council with these constraints?
Well, first, let me address what conflict of interest is. Conflict of interest arises when one has a personal stake in the outcome of a discussion. That's conflict of interest. Conflict of interest does not arise from having alliances with other people in the party. That's a whole different issue. And to be specific about conflict of interest, it's a non-issue with respect of Elizabeth being a member of parliament and me being on council. What would be an issue would be if Elizabeth were a voting member of council, and if we were voting together on the same issues, and if there was some way that I could benefit her by voting on an issue where she could benefit me. But she's not a voting member of council. And she will not be a member of, she will not be any kind of a member of council at all next time up, unless council refreshes the decision, which I believe was faulty, to have the 3 members of parliament be members of council. I think the members of parliament should be reporting to council, rather like some of the senior staff should be and others, but there's no reason at all for them to be members. Council should be the group of councillors who are there to make decisions. Other people are observers or reporters to council. So we will have a past leader, who will now be Joanne, will be a member of the council, because that's the way it works. I can see no reason why the 3 members of parliament should be members, and I would move to actually have them not be members anymore. But first and foremost, going back to the question of whether or not there's some kind of a conflict, there is no conflict of interest with 2 people running in the same party. Look at Jack Layton and Olivia Chow. Look at any number of examples that have happened over Canadian history of people who are allied together, excuse me, in various ways, being members of the same political party and working on the same issues. So, thank you.
Okay. So now we'll have 1.5 minutes of closing pitch. And John, you get to go first with your closing remarks.
Okay. Well, I'm here because I'm actually a consensus builder and a change maker. And it's not unknown to members of the party across the country that the last federal council has not exactly been a model of consensus. We've had councillors resign because they're feeling that they can't be heard within council. We've had all sorts of questions where people freeze at camera sessions, in what they call in camera sessions, to come out with particular things. We have not built a unified council that speaks with a unified voice, or that encourages engagement by other members of the party. I'm an environmental economist, an entrepreneur. I'm an actual governance practitioner. I actually have expertise and training in this field. And I've been a leader on nonprofit business councils and boards for years. And I am well known in my fields as a guy who works towards building consensus. And we can do it again here. But what we need to do is to engage much more strongly with all the rest of the party, the whole party, members, EDAs. We need to invite youth and diversified people in. And by that, I don't mean just making room. We need to invite them in, provide space, and give them autonomy to work. Young people are the natural members of the Green Party all over this country. And the fact that they feel frozen out, the people that I've talked to across the country, it's a scandalous thing. We shouldn't be doing this. Going back to questions of governance, it's not hard to professionalize governance within this party. It's not hard. It requires simple tools that are available on millions of boards all over the world. For some reason, we've decided that we have to invent things within the Green Party that are the only things that we can do. It's just not right. It's just a question of keeping governance reasonable, moving ahead with the times, and bringing modern tools to bear on our problems. It's just a little dose of professionalism. And reporting back to members is critical. Reporting to members on what our goals are, what our strategic objectives are. All of these things can be done. We need to be supporting our caucus and our shadow cabinet. If that's a conflict of interest to support our caucus, then I'll stop there. I think that I'd be an excellent candidate for vice president, and I urge you to vote for me. Thanks so much.
Darcy, your closing remarks?
My closing remarks. I joined the Green Party because I like to get things done. I've been getting a lot of things done on council. And I would agree that the last 6 months on council have been very discordant. And it was such a shock to me when it first started to happen, because that's not the way council has been going. I've been on since 2016. I've been to every convention. Well, I attended remotely the 2012, but in person since 2014. I've been to council meetings before I was on council. And I would say that I am the person who brings people in. I bring people together. I bring people in, and young people as well. I mentored a young Green on each of my 2 terms. First one from Quebec, and then one from PEI, our new PEI. Certainly I recruited to get another young Green on council. So this whole talk that council is dysfunctional, it doesn't work, everything's wrong with it. I don't agree with that. There's some excellent people on council. Jean-Luc has governance degrees, the president, he's been doing an excellent job. Joanne Roberts is working almost around the clock. Our MPs are working really hard. I chair the finance committee. I have a great grasp on finance, financial statements. Actually, the not-for-profit that I run here has almost exactly the same budget as the Green Party, so it works perfectly for me. I took on the chair of the convention committee because it's in Charlottetown, and I recruited young people to be on the convention committee so that they can do something that's more fun. And also we put a Manitoba rep on so they would have experience, so that when the next convention goes to Manitoba, it will have some experienced people on it. Sorry. Merci, thank you, Will Allen.
Thank you, John and Darcy, for coming tonight, answering our questions, and yeah, looking forward to hearing more. Now we'll switch over to Fund Rep with Dave Begler and Kate Story. So again, it will be introductions, and then they'll have 3 questions that they're required to answer as well. First up for the intro, Kate.
Okay. And you said the intro is about when COVID hit?
Oh,
is that correct?
A little bit about yourself, and then,
okay.
Yeah, a sentence or more about how, COVID changed. Thanks for the reminder.
All right. So when coronavirus hit, I was visiting my daughter's family. They live in Germany, and I had to say goodbye to my grandchildren and get myself home. Home is an organic farm, and we are always somewhat isolated here. So our only real difference now in my life is that I don't go to town except for groceries and farm supplies, because the farm work happens all the time, as it ever did. As far as the Green Party, I am really impressed with the staff and the way they have been coping, working from home. So the council has been on that and supported them in their efforts. So I'm hoping everybody else is also managing this difficult time as well. Thank you.
Dave?
Thanks, Teresa. I'm Dave Bagler. I'm a former Young Greens councillor, former Ontario rep, and former party president. And looking at some of the names on the webinar today, I think I've probably knocked on doors or made phone calls with some of you. I'd say the biggest thing about the pandemic has been I've been working from home with a almost 4-year-old and a baby. And at this point, I have let my son paint my face 3 times during conference calls to keep them in one spot and relatively quiet to get through them. So, but it's actually been quite nice to have extra time to be home with my daughter, who is almost 3 months old.
Okay, Dave, you get the first question first. How do you see the best strategy on spending money to help EDAs during elections? And should there only be targeted ridings to win or targeted to grow? Or what is your strategy there?
Right. So I think first off is that in terms of getting the most for your money, spending it during an election is often too late. The idea is to build strength between elections so that you have a local organization that is capable of executing a large-scale campaign. And what large-scale means, to get to the other part of the question, changes riding by riding. So some ridings, yeah, they are in a position to target to win. I think Fredericton is a great example of that, where they did really well in the last election but didn't quite make it, and they win this time around. And I think that Nanaimo is another great example of that, where they received that funding in the last election. They were able to build over a 2-election period to do that. I think you have an opportunity to do that right in Kitchener. I spent a week during the writ in Kitchener, helping with Mike's campaign. And I think that that result, you can build off of that and go. So that's a riding where you're looking at giving them resources, not just money, resources to help them build an organization to win. But yes, there needs to be another tier where you identify where are those ridings that it's probably not a check that they need, but they need help and they need guidance and they need some ability to say, okay, you're at this level. What are the best practices to get you to that next level? And carry them and give them all the support and help that they need to get there. Thank you.
Kate, same question.
Okay, so the first thing in a strategy to help EDAs win is to engage the EDAs. The EDAs have to feel like they're important members of the team because they are the most important members of any political party. EDAs are where it's at. So you engage them, they need tools, they need training, they need all this much in advance of an election. As Dave said, you have to build on the ground well in advance. It's too late. You can't just pour money into some place and expect to win if you start, right at election time. So there are several key elements to a successful campaign that tend to be ignored. There needs to be a bank account that needs to have a significant amount of money in it so that you can hire staff, you can have an office, you can be there, be a presence in the community. And you absolutely need a campaign manager that is good at their job before you can ever even think about winning. The EDAs really are the best place to fundraise because peer-to-peer fundraising is obviously much more effective. You go to people face to face, you talk, you introduce them to your candidate, you talk up your candidate, and then people give. The national office can't do that because they can't get that personal connection. And we have to learn how to campaign, how to go door to door, how to collect the data, but also how to present the Green Party, because the problem is nobody knows what the Green Party is. We know who we are, but we have to teach the public who the Green Party is. And I think we're well on the way to getting there, but there's a lot of work to be done. And I'm really excited about our new executive director because he apparently has great engagement skills. So I expect good things going forward.
Kate, next question too. If you got a budget of $1 million for the party in a non-election year, how would you spend it? And how would you spend that budget in an election year? So $1 million budget.
You mean just a 1 mil? I should look at my chat here.
Yes, just 1 million.
Okay, if you only had $1 million, okay. The biggest cost in any election is advertisement. So if you only have $1 million, you're not going to do any TV advertisement, obviously. So you have to start generating interest in your party. And that means you have to make sure that you are presenting your platform in a way that the media will pick up, because the media is your free advertising, right? We have to do a much better job of communications, of figuring out how to say our policies in a way that really engages the public. In this last election, this was our election to win, right? We're the party of the environment, and climate change was a huge deal, and then people were mobilizing in the street, and we weren't there. We weren't able to make those connections with the public. We weren't able to show the media that we were on the ground and we were ready to win. And then that 2 weeks before the end of the election, the media gave up on us because we weren't in the social media, we weren't on the ground, and volunteers on the ground and social media don't take any money. So it doesn't matter whether it's in election or like before an election or during an election, we have to learn how to use that social media, how to Am I even on here? Something's happened. Hello?
You're on.
Oh, okay, sorry. My
all
screen
on.
all of a sudden went blank. So we have to really learn to get the Green Party recognized by the public. So I've lost my time. Am I out of time?
Yes, I think so.
Okay, there we go. Sorry, my screen suddenly did really weird things.
That was Matt's showing up the time card for.
Okay. Yeah, it didn't come up as it any. Sorry, go ahead.
Dave, same question to you for $1 million budget.
So in the event that we actually have a $1 million budget, this would not be a good scenario for us to find ourselves in a party. It would actually be a lot like the what we found ourselves doing in terms of what we had capacity to do in the run-up to the 2011 election. When you think of the pre-writ spending that was spent for that election where we won one seat, we're looking at a seat that cost us, you know, depending when you add up all the soft costs, probably around $500,000. So this is, in that situation, that's probably what I'd be looking at doing in the non-election year. The non-election year would be taking half of that and preparing for the election year in an area where I think that we could maintain or pick up a seat. And then the other half would be used to support filling a slate of candidates in advance, providing training, templates, whatever we could do for other ridings, as well as maintaining a presence in Ottawa with the office and making sure that we maintained all of our compliance that we needed to with Elections Canada. In an election year, then you're looking at doing what you can with that small budget to get the word out in that area. So that's going to mean spending on targeted Facebook ads in those areas where you think that we might have a chance for success, and targeting who we think our voters are. And it's also going to mean doing, you know, maybe local advertising. You can do a lot of advertising, for example, in Atlantic Canada for not a lot of money, if that happens to be an area where we have a lot of success. But it is going to be a much smaller campaign at $1 million than what most Greens are used to. Thank you.
Dave, you've been a member of federal council and served as an interim president for several months prior to the 2015 election. How do you propose to increase transparency between federal council and the EDAs and members? And while on council, how did you push for these changes?
So I think that what can be done now is recognize that this is a volunteer board where members have a constituency. So the Ontario rep should be talking to the members in Ontario, the EDAs in Ontario, but also because we have a strong provincial party, they should be speaking with the Green Party of Ontario and making sure that they're communicating what the Green Party plans are to their constituents. And that can be repeated for the other provinces and territories. I think that that's going to be really helpful at getting that information to people who are on the grassroots. Personally, I think that one thing that's changed since I was on council is there seems to be a real blanket use of in-camera sessions without reports coming out of them. I happen to be the president of the party in the time that we were in the run-up to the election, like you said. So we were going in camera almost exclusively to talk about the details of campaign strategy and employment issues. But you've seen, I've observed every council meeting since the election, almost every meeting we're going in camera for some reason that are often pretty vague in terms of the motion going in camera. And often the meeting just goes on for hours and just ends. And there's no report out of camera because the call has dropped all the observers. We need to improve that observer experience so that people feel like it's a good use of their time to be observing council meetings, and that has to be promoted actively to members and EDAs. EDA executives should be told when each council meeting is coming, they should be reminded, they should be asked to attend. And I feel like having more eyes on council is one of the best ways to have more transparency. Thank you.
Kate, you have been a member of federal council for several years and in the role of treasurer since 2011. Do you think that you would be able to pivot with the changes that many feel need to be made? And how have you pushed the council to change in the past?
All right, so yes, absolutely, I would be able to pivot because the changes that need to be made are changes that I have been pushing for a long time. The Green Party has been growing, and we are going through a lot of growing pains, and a lot of us can see where we need to be. It's just a matter of time. You can't do everything all at once. I've been the governance committee chair for a long time, and we adopted a governance model a few years ago that's extraordinarily difficult to understand. Well, it's not actually difficult to understand. It's quite simple, really, when you understand it. It works quite well. But the difficult part is that we have a council that is almost new. Half of it is new almost every year. We have a high turnover, and you're constantly training your councillors in an unusual governance model. And so we have never quite got to where we should be. We haven't become an effective council because we're still training all the time. So as far as my presence personally on the council, my role has been, for a while now, has been to remind people where we've been. I know the history, and the history is valuable. You don't want to keep on making the same mistakes as you grow. You want to have someone there who recognizes what those mistakes are, can refresh everybody's memory of why, when we tried this before, it didn't work, and then we can move forward.
Okay, time for closing pitches. You have 1.5 minutes to sum up your spots, talk about anything that we never got to ask a question about. And Kate, you get to go first.
Okay. The Green Party is at the key turning point, and this point has been faced with all political parties in the past, or by all political parties. The question is, will the Green Party refuse to put power ahead of principle? Or will we give up our soul and allow the backroom boys to control and manipulate their way to power, just like what's happened to the Conservative and Liberal and NDP parties? In this council election, I've been libeled, I've been threatened, and that's not the Green way. I believe that federal councillors must be honest and respectful and protect our democracy and our democratic values. Greens collaborate. We don't demean our opponents. We win on the strength of our argument. And how we win matters. Canada does not need Greens to be another power-hungry NDP party. So federal council must resist the temptation to use top-down control tactics. We'll win more seats if we're seen as a party of integrity and real democracy. And Green Party councillors have to refuse to put that power ahead of principle. I think Canada is ready for a Green Party if we are for the people and by the people, and that extends right up into council. Council has to figure out a way how to do grassroots politics. It's never been done before, but we are the party to do it. We have to start by engaging our members, engaging our EDAs. We have to start trusting our EDAs. Training them, yes, but not disciplining them, but supporting them and helping them to do things better and lead this party forward. Thank you. Merci. Chimigwech.
Dave?
Hi. Thank you. And just thank Matt and thanks to Teresa for organizing this. I think it's been a wonderful night of conversation, both for the executive positions and for the Ontario rep positions earlier. I think that council has been making a lot of the same mistakes over and over again, particularly when it comes to transparency and communication and supporting EDAs. I think we need change on federal council, and I think there's no way around it. That means bringing in new federal councillors. And I personally realize, though, that council isn't an entry-level job. But I've been elected to the Young Greens, to federal council's Ontario rep. I was the interim president and then elected as the Green Party of Canada's president. I've also been a Green Party of Ontario candidate twice. I've worked on campaigns in 6 different provinces. I have the national experience, not only to work with the other colleagues to improve some of these issues that we're having, but to bring in a perspective from the campaign work that I've done all over the country. I think that this campaign has been overly negative. This is the first time we've got more than 1 million votes. We have 3 MPs that are doing a fantastic job. I'm not concerned about the soul of our party. I look at the biographies of the people who are running for the Young Greens Council. I look at the bios of the people who are running for party leader, and I'm filled with hope. I think that this is the time to come together, to actively go out and engage all those that over the 1.1 million people who voted for us in the last election, get them involved in the leadership race and grow our party. I think that if we can go out and do that, if we can empower EDAs, if we can provide stable governance, and if we can build a culture of respect, then I think our future is bright and we're really going to excel. So please make me your first choice for fund rep when you cast your ballot. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kate and Dave. And I'd like to thank all the candidates tonight for participating and putting your name out there and going for council. And I'll turn it back over to Matt.
Yeah, I can say that as well. I appreciate all the discussions that everyone had. I got a lot of new insight into how federal council works through these discussions. And I'm excited to follow you guys as you take on the role in the coming term. We have a few points of order. Someone had put in a reminder that there's some crossover between the Green Party and Fair Vote Canada. So they wanted to just put out a reminder to any Fair Vote members to also vote for that council election, which is being held right now. And of course, the voting for federal council will close on May 1st. So anyone who's watching or seeing this later on YouTube, it will be posted as soon as we get it ready. Remember to vote by May 1st. And yeah, curious to see what the results will bring. Is there anything else that we need to wrap up with? Any closing thoughts from anybody?
Well, thank you very much to the organizers.
Thank you.
It's not easy to organize these things. It's appreciated.
It brings its challenges to do it via Zoom, but it's nice to still be able to bring everybody together to get everyone's position heard. And yeah, we appreciate that everyone took the time to join in tonight. And also thanks for the time and effort that everyone has put into their campaigns. It's a big job to run a campaign for this, and be an even bigger job to take on the roles in federal council once this is all over. So thank you for that. Thanks for your efforts for the Green Party.